I want to use our remaining time to talk a little bit about current events, because you recently had an interview on Democracy Now! That actually became the most viewed clip in the history of Democracy Now! On their YouTube channel. 5 million people have watched this. Everyone is deeply inspired by you, where you argued very much that the United States, that you were talking about Trump, and you were talking about Trump's tariff plans, and you argued essentially that we need to understand Trump's economic plans, Trump's Make America Great Again agenda, as a kind of desperate and futile attempt by a dying empire to preserve its global power.
The American economy is in trouble. The American empire is in decline. We don't want to discuss it in this country. We engage in denial, and instead we are striking out at other people, a sad way of handling a decline.
One of the commenters on that video put it nicely. The United States is like the Titanic, too big to turn, too slow to react, in denial about sinking, and there aren't enough lifeboats for every passenger except the 1% ultra-rich. Tell us, help us understand. We've been talking about peeling back myths, helping people understand what is really going on. Trump is very much a case where a story is being told that is at odds with reality.
Yeah, it is. I am far from the only person. I don't want to leave the impression that I'm the, I see it and everybody else misses it. I don't believe that. I am one of a growing number of people, which, by the way, I was born in the United States. I've been here all my life. I've lived here. I've worked here. I'm married. I have 2 children, all the rest of it. I'm 100% American citizen and happy to be so. It's not in any way that I'm unique. But even though I'm pleased that I'm now part of a much broader, let me put it this way, because it may interest you. The left perspective is stronger in the culture of the United States today than at any time in my lifetime. And I was a student and got activated in the 1960s, et cetera, et cetera. So I am not complaining. I am having a very good time in many, many ways, such as the number of viewers we're now able to get, et cetera, et cetera. It's quite a move to go from the classroom as a professor, which is what I've done all my life, to now being in this much larger arena, let us call it by what it is. But here's what I would say to you. We just had a presidential election. We had 3 candidates, Trump, Biden, and Kamala Harris. None of them ever uttered the word empire, ever uttered the phrase declining empire, challenged empire, empire at a crossroads, anything like that. We live in a country that needs to deny that the rise and fall of the Greeks and the Romans and the Persians, and if you pardon me, the British, could be followed by the rise and the fall of this empire. I mean, what is it we think we did after 1945 with the end of World War II? Clearly, the British Empire was finished. India just finished it off in the immediate aftermath. And what they didn't do, the Mau Mau did in Kenya, et cetera, et cetera. And the United States replaced it. Instead of the British pound, we had the U.S. dollar. Instead of the British Navy, we had the American dominance, nuclear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had a very nice run, really good kind of second half of the 20th century and the early parts, sort of this century. It's over. It was never a question of when it would die. It was only a question of, it was never a question of whether. It was only a question of when. Anyone with even the slightest knowledge of earlier empires would have had to understand it. But here the nation is in complete denial. And you may be much better able than I am, having lived in your society, to understand that mentality. I sometimes, when I go through London, am involved in experiences in which I shake my head and say they still don't want to admit that their empire is over. We are at a much earlier stage. We have more excuse for denial. But that's all we have. We have denial. The closest we came was MAGA, this vague notion that there was a greatness that we had to establish. But he's very careful. Mr. Trump is very careful. He knows that the mass of the Americans already feel that they've gotten the short end of the stick on a declining empire. They get it. They really do. It's only the academic world, the PR world, the media, the government, they need to tell a different story. And so their story, and this impacts your audience, their story is that the rest of the world, and particularly Europe, has cheated us, has abused us, has manipulated us, and we've had weak leaders, Republican and Democratic alike, who permitted this travesty to be performed on us. And Mr. Trump getting on the biggest white horse he can find, trying not to fall off because he's a bit overweight, trying to give the image of the leader who is going to punish the miscreants in Europe who took advantage, who's going to punish the Russians and punish the Chinese. What better way than to hit them all over the head with a tariff? What a wonderful gesture of a leading. None of this is going to work. None of it. But he's putting on a spectacular show, and he will be able to go to the capitalist class of this country, telling them with justice that this is the only way to hold on to this empire a few more years. We are dealing, and this is so hard for others to understand. And I have that trouble here in this country too. I try to get Americans to understand you're not dealing with a government that is strong. You're dealing with a government that is desperate. And that can be very dangerous and very troubling. But to understand it, you've got to see it in that way. Otherwise, you cannot make any sense. Mr. Trump doesn't understand what he's doing. His advisors, who include people I know personally, try to explain it to him. But he is the showman. And when there's a dispute between the show and what they tell him, he goes with the show. And look, it got him into the presidency. It would be stupid for him to change what he has done, and he knows it, and he's staying with it.
Yeah, I mean, you argued on Democracy Now! That it was the story he's telling of being ripped off by foreigners and how we're going to rebuild American prosperity with giant import taxes, a mass deportation program, and tax cuts for the wealthy is, in your words, completely fantastical. So, as an economist, I mean, you understand that none of this can actually work. It can't deliver what Trump says he's going to deliver to the American people.
Well, I'm careful. I don't believe in predictions, whether a Marxist makes them or anybody else. So I'm not going to make a prediction for you. If you were to say to me, as people have, is there a zero probability that he can come out of this? I would answer no, it's not zero. It's higher than zero. He could have, it would be lucky, it would be luck, but he could be able to somehow stave off a recession, stave off the inflation that his tariffs are bringing to us as I speak to you. He could overwhelm the retaliation that's coming from the rest of the world and somehow pull all this off. Is that possible? Yeah, that's possible. That is possible. I could, if I had to, and I've done the efforts, chart out how it might. But you're talking about a probability of a probability of a probability. And if you know anything about mathematics, when you do that, you get a very small probability. 10% of 10% of 10% gets vanishingly close to nothing very quickly. That's where he is. It's a tremendous bet. But again, he's able to say, and he is saying to the people around him at the top of the business community, I'm the best shot you've got. And the truth of it is, they believe him enough not to throw him out. And if he loses them, he'll be gone.
But I think it's fairly safe to say that most American workers are being sold a bill of goods. That they're unlikely to. That the true Trump agenda is enriching the richest, cutting benefits for the poorest, deregulation, cutting environmental regulations, and really a lot of people are going to be deeply hurt by the Trump agenda. It's when he promises prosperity.
Yeah, and look, the working class. He wouldn't be elected today. I mean, he has in 100 days or whatever it is now, 3 months, he has lost a significant. He still has. I don't want to take away from him. He still has the people that like the story he tells, whose anger and upset gets worse, but their allegiance to his story also gets stronger. There is that group, but there's another group more in the middle. He's lost them. If they were to vote today, they wouldn't vote him in.
Thanks for watching. This video is a product of Current Affairs Magazine, the country's leading independent left print magazine based here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Go to currentaffairs.org to find out more about us, and currentaffairs.org/subscribe to subscribe to our absolutely gorgeous bi-monthly print edition. Get it in your mailbox. You can also subscribe to the Current Affairs News Briefing, the Current Affairs Podcast, or you can subscribe to our digital edition. Current Affairs is entirely reader-supported. We have no ads. We have no corporate backers. We depend on you. So please consider purchasing a subscription or making a donation to Current Affairs today. We are a 501c3 non-profit organization, and your donations are tax-deductible to the extent allowable by law. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.